Good morning, dear students. I am Dr. Suma Embar, Department of English, Government First Grade College, Kuvempu Nagar, Mysore. This is a short video on Julius Caesar by William Shakespeare. This play is prescribed for Language English syllabus of the 4th semester BA BSc programs of the CBCS pattern, University of Mysore. Let's have a look at Shakespeare's biographical information. His father was a bailiff in town hall. He was a trader in leather goods. Shakespeare was born in Stratford village. It's a very small village, like our Nanjangud. In 1564, Avon River close by it. Shakespeare used to meet many customers, merchants who used to come to his father's place, who would tell stories, folk tales, legends of their countries. The stories and folk tales were all used by Shakespeare later as source material for his plays. He went to grammar school, learnt little bit of Latin and Greek, and he stopped education in 1577. He started writing in 1578 and married Anne Hathaway in 1582. Later he went to England after a quarrel with a local landlord. Here is a picture of Avon River at Stratford. Now the place, Stratford, is beautifully maintained as a tourist town. This is Shakespeare's house in Stratford village, which is now converted into a world-class tourist place where Stratford Festival is held every year, and this year too. Here you get a glimpse of Shakespeare's house, or rather the inside of his house. Here you see the kitchen with utensils, vessels and wooden ladles, everything. Everything is maintained intact by the government in this tourist place. When he went to London, he didn't have any stable job. He worked as a theatre assistant in various theatre companies. He was doing all sorts of jobs as a prompter, script editor, music composer. He actually learnt everything when he was working for his livelihood. He had the friendship of many contemporary dramatists who were all great writers and dramatists who were called university wits. They were Greene, Peele, Kidd and Marlowe. In those days, London was the center for cultural activities, and it was also a trade town. Merchants came from all over the world to London. Naturally, money flowed a lot. People were rich, they wanted entertainment, and of course, Queen Elizabeth encouraged cultural activities. People wanted some kind of time pass evocation for them. Songs, music, love, drama, gambling, everything flourished during that time. England was also politically very active, and England was expanding its borders, frontiers. It was on the way to become an empire. Shakespeare in those days was encouraged and supported by Queen Elizabeth. He was also working for a Chamberlain's company. There were many theatre guilds during that time, and many of the plays were performed within the palace, including the palace of Queen Elizabeth. But theatres were built outside the town too. Shakespeare, after a very long and successful career, died on 23rd of April 1616. Before that, 3 years earlier to that, he had returned to his native place, that is Stratford, during his last years. He was buried in Trinity Church in his village in 1616. The picture of the church with his tomb you can see in the picture below. And you can also see his own words on the tombstone. How was the Globe Theatre in the 16th century? It was a huge one with seats for 1500 people. It was made of wood. This wooden theatre was demolished, burned down in 1664 during the Puritanical period. It was octagonal shape with 8 sides, and it was a very traditional kind of a theatre. Here is the new Globe Theatre, built near the foundation of the old one, or the old burnt Globe Theatre. Now tourists flock to this new theatre more than ever. This is how the play is performed inside the Globe Theatre. You can see the stage surrounded on 3 sides by 3 stories of audience seatings. The spectators are seated in the middle as well as in the first and second stages of the theatre. The roof of the theatre is open. What is Renaissance? Shakespeare upheld the spirit of Renaissance. The people of Renaissance had interest in classical values and tradition. New science was being discovered, technology being developed, astronomy was encouraged to grow, and people started asking questions. At the same time, new continents were being discovered. Commerce also grew. Printing technology came into being. Compass helped the empire grow. Humanism was born. Humanism means the rebirth of human spirit and wisdom. Renaissance gave importance to individual thought and actions and not to religious beliefs. People started taking responsibility for their own thoughts and actions and gradually stopped looking up to stars and blaming their fates or cursing the gods for their tragedy. Julius Caesar was first performed in 1599 at the Globe Theatre. As we already know, it was burned down later. Shakespeare's play as well as the plays of others were also performed there. This play is about political rivalry, jealousy, power, human tragedy, and social psychology. Historically, Caesar as a ruler was used by Shakespeare as a metaphor for human desire for power and individual failures. In the acts 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, you see the glory of Caesar, the public response to it, the political reasons for his assassination, and emergence of a new world order. Most of you might have gone through the first 3 acts already. In some of the rural colleges, the last 2 acts might not have been completed. The syllabus might have been done in a hurry. I have concentrated mainly on the 4th and 5th acts in this video. In the 4th act, let's go scene by scene. In the first scene, we see Antony, Octavius, and Lepidus meet in Antony's house to plot against the conspirators. They prepare in cold blood the list of all those who should be killed all those who were supporters to Brutus and Cassius. Antony, we see, has a very low opinion of Lepidus. Octavius defends Lepidus. This scene brings out how Antony and Octavius are full of ambition. In the second act, we see Brutus, who is growing more and more depressed. The scene takes place in Sardis, in Brutus' tent. They have all camped there to participate in the war the next day. Cassius arrives at Brutus' tent with his army. Brutus starts accusing Cassius, and Brutus also blames Cassius that he is not committed enough to the cause. Cassius is naturally offended by Brutus' attitude. This scene shows how they are both in tension. They are not sure of anything anymore. In the third act, that is, the place is Brutus' tent, both Brutus and Cassius start arguing in front of soldiers. Brutus accuses Cassius of having an itchy palm, which means he took bribe from unworthy people who were given important positions in the army. Cassius becomes emotional. In the middle of quarrel, he starts crying and he declares that he will commit suicide because Brutus doubted him. Then Brutus cools down and they become friends again. Then Brutus reveals the reason for his erratic behavior and temper. He opens out his tragedy that his wife Ocia had killed herself by swallowing the embers. As Brutus does not sleep that night, the ghost of Caesar appears before him and says, "They will meet next day at Philippi." In the fifth act, scene 1 and 2, we see Octavius and Antony engaging in verbal duel with Brutus and Cassius. Both the parties are verbally quarreling before the war, and Brutus and Cassius go separate ways just before the battle starts. Brutus sends Messala to warn his army to be ready for battle. These are very short scenes where dialogue is less and action is more. The dialogue tells us how the mutiny and the consequences have snowballed into actions which cannot be stopped anymore. In the third scene of Act 5, we see a lot of confusion. It is a scene of chaos where people do not know what is happening, where it is happening, and how they have to react to it. Cassius sends Titinius to go and check whether the soldiers who were near Cassius' tent belonged to Antony's army or Brutus' army. He thinks Antony has attacked his soldiers. Titinius goes to check. Then Cassius sends his servant Pindarus too to find out about Titinius. Pindarus climbs a hill and shouts from above that Titinius is being attacked by Antony's soldiers. In the night, he couldn't see who had surrounded Titinius' horse. Cassius is of course sad. He thinks that Titinius is going to be killed by Antony. He asks Pindarus to stab him and kill him. Pindarus kills Cassius. It is a very heart-rendingly tragic scene where Cassius has to die due to the confusion. Alas, now Titinius comes back with Messala, happily to announce that it was Brutus' army which welcomed him. But he sees the body of Cassius and immediately realizes why Cassius is dead or why he killed himself. Titinius is so shocked and out of sorrow. Titinius too stabs himself and dies right in front of Cassius. Later comes Brutus and sees the bodies of both the friends, Cassius and Titinius. He doesn't show his emotions, he is detached and orders that war should continue and he will lament later. This shows us another side of Brutus' character. In the fourth scene, the war has begun and Brutus encourages his army to fight till death for the cause. His friend Cato too dies fighting. Lucilius is captured. Lucilius tells Antony's soldier to kill him, that is Brutus, and earn a reward. Actually, he is posing as Brutus to save Brutus from Antony's soldiers. But when Antony meets the imprisoned Lucilius and knows that he is not Brutus, Antony wants to go after Brutus, but Lucilius tells him that Brutus will be glad to die rather than be captured by the enemy, because Brutus is too honorable. This is the last scene of the play. In the battlefield, Brutus and his men are all tired. They know that Antony's army is coming nearer, it is winning. Brutus realizes that he will lose the battle. When Antony's army comes nearer, Brutus warns all his men to run away and save themselves. Only Strato is supposed to be with him. Brutus asks others to stab him, but they all refuse. Later he asks Strato to stab him and kill him. Strato obediently follows his orders and kills Brutus by stabbing him with the same sword which he used to stab Caesar. Remember that Cassius had asked Pindarus to kill him by stabbing him. Octavius and Antony enter the place and see the body of Brutus. Antony sincerely respects Brutus and says, "This was the noblest Roman of all." The last speech of the play is made by Octavius, who declares that Brutus will be buried honorably according to his status and declares that war is over. Here is a picture downloaded from Google which shows the death of Brutus, who is standing, and Strato is holding the sword. Let's summarize what we have understood from the fourth and fifth acts. These two acts describe the consequences of the political assassination of Julius Caesar. Antony emerges as strong leader and Octavius is a new character. From the fourth act onwards, he would become the emperor of Rome later. He would be called Augustus later. With him, the idea of republican Rome is completely dead. The fourth act indicates the turn of events which are supposed to take place later. The changing mind of Brutus is revealed in Act 4. Earlier he was hesitant to kill Caesar. Now he speaks more determined to uphold his act of killing. Even the death of his wife doesn't weaken his determination to fight for the cause till death. There is an indication that both Cassius and Brutus are not sure of winning. They are not repenting, yet they know that they are fighting a losing game. Brutus has become philosophical and Cassius is emotional. The ghost of Caesar is symbolic of the revenge of Caesar and the inner realization of Brutus that he may die in the battlefield. He is very calm about it. suicide of both Cassius and Titinius shows that Brutus will be alone at the end. Shakespeare brings out the tragedy of a lost cause and tragedy of a person with limitations, that is Brutus. The crime and punishment are cyclical according to the dramatist. Just as Caesar killed Pompey and became the ruler, Brutus killed Caesar but he commits suicide. The play points out that the death of Caesar brought instability, war, chaos, and ultimately the society needs assurance of good governance. The idealist in Brutus could not see the people as they are. The Romans could not understand the concept or ideology of republic and freedom, for which Brutus killed Caesar and he also committed suicide. According to some critics, the play can also be taken as Shakespeare's opinion of republic and monarchy. Here I have given a list of authors and critics who have written wonderful critical essays on Shakespeare and especially on Julius Caesar. Let me read out the names: Dryden, Hudson, Dowden, G.B. Shaw, Wilson Knights, Harold Wilson, Harold Bloom, Terry Wilton, Elsie Knights, and Vivian Thomas. There are hundreds of critics who have worked on Shakespeare. If you search in the Google, you will get more information. Here is a list of writers and translators and critics in Kannada who have worked on Julius Caesar and also translated Julius Caesar into Kannada. For example, Julius Caesar, the play, is translated by Professor K.S. Bhagwan, noted translator and thinker. Similarly, Masti Venkatesh Iyengar also has translated. A.N. Murtirao, B.A. Sanadi, Raghvachar and Shah Balurao and many others in Kannada have written critical reviews on Shakespeare and Julius Caesar. Kannada has always welcomed Shakespeare with open arms. Thank you.